had always taken pride in his car. It wasn't new, but it was reliable, polished every weekend, and a small reminder that years of hard work could still produce something worth showing off. On a quiet Friday evening after a long day at work, he pulled into the neighborhood parking area, shut off the engine, and walked toward his townhouse. The streets were calm, porch lights glowed warmly, and the world felt steady. That feeling lasted only until the next morning. When stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, the sight that greeted him made his stomach twist. His car was no longer resting neatly in its spot. Instead, it was shoved against the curb, the front bumper cracked, and the hood dented like a crushed soda can. Shards of plastic littered the ground, catching the early sunlight in sharp glints. He froze, almost unable to believe it was his car. The coffee mug tilted dangerously in his hand, forgotten. For a long moment, he simply stared, his mind struggling to piece together what could have happened. No one in the neighborhood ever drove recklessly, and there had been no storms, no fallen branches, no sign of another vehicle. Then a voice called out. "Morning," said a man in a dark security vest. He appeared from around the corner, carrying a clipboard in one hand and what looked like a ticket pad in the other. His posture was stiff, almost theatrical, as though every step was part of a performance. He stopped in front of his car, squinting at the damage, then at. "You'll want to be more careful where you park," the man said, scribbling something onto the ticket pad. "You were right on the stop sign line, caused a hazard, had to be moved for safety." Blinked, "Moved by who?" "By me," the man answered without hesitation. "I'm with HOA enforcement." He tapped his vest where a patch was stitched. It looked official enough at first glance, though the words were blurred and the design was generic. This was a necessary action, standard procedure. His pulse spiked. "You moved my car, that's why it's wrecked." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he tore off a slip from the pad and held it out like a police citation. "Violation notice. You can contest it, of course, but I'd advise against it. Rules are rules." Took the slip but barely glanced at it. His eyes were locked on the man, who was already turning away, tucking the clipboard under his arm with the casual confidence of someone used to having the last word. "Hold on," said sharply. "What's your name?" "Officer," the man replied over his shoulder. "Neighborhood safety officer. You'll see my reports in the next board update." And with that, he strode off, boots striking the pavement in deliberate rhythm until he disappeared around the corner. Stood frozen, the slip crumpling in his hand. His heart was racing, his breath shallow. He looked back at the car, then at the empty street, as if someone else might emerge to confirm what he had just witnessed. But the street was silent. Only the faint chirping of morning birds filled the air. After several minutes, he forced himself to examine the violation notice. It was nothing more than a generic piece of paper with handwritten notes. "Improper parking, vehicle obstructing, relocated by HOA officer." There was no official seal, no signature line, no phone number. Muttered under his breath, "This isn't real." Yet the damage to his car very much was. He spent the next hour photographing every angle, documenting the scratches, the dents, the way the tires had scraped against the curb. His hands trembled with each photo, partly from anger, partly from disbelief. How could anyone think they had the right to move someone else's car like that? And if this so-called officer wasn't real, then what exactly was going on? As worked, he noticed a curtain shifting in a nearby window. His neighbor, Mrs. Fletcher, peeked out before quickly disappearing again. Another neighbor walked past with his dog, offering a sympathetic nod but no words. The silence of the street felt heavy, as though everyone had seen something but preferred not to speak. By the time went back inside, the sun was high in the sky and the questions in his mind were multiplying. Who was this officer? Was he really part of the HOA or just pretending? Why hadn't anyone stopped him? And most importantly, what was supposed to do now that his car, his pride and joy, had been wrecked in the name of safety? One thing was certain, this wasn't the end of it. Was determined to find out the truth no matter how long it took. And though he didn't know it yet, that decision would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the entire neighborhood. The weekend passed in a haze of frustration. Could not get the image of the so-called officer out of his mind. The stiff posture, the calm tone, the confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed. Every time he looked out his front window and saw the dent in his car, the slip of paper replayed in his thoughts. By Monday morning, he decided to act. He started by calling the homeowners association office. A polite receptionist answered and asked directly, "Can you confirm the name officer? He says he's part of HOA enforcement." There was a pause, followed by the sound of typing. "I'm sorry, sir," the receptionist said gently. "We don't have anyone by that name. We don't have officers. We have community managers and maintenance, but not officers." His grip tightened on the phone. "So no one is supposed to be giving out citations or moving vehicles?" "Correct," the receptionist said. "If there was an issue, it would go through our office directly. We would never relocate a vehicle without notice." Thanked her and hung up, his jaw clenched. The picture was clear. The man wasn't official. But then, who had given him the authority to walk around with a vest and a clipboard, handing out made-up violations? That evening, decided to walk the block and ask around. The sun was low, casting warm orange light across porches and trimmed lawns. He spotted Mrs. Fletcher again, the elderly neighbor who had peeked from behind her curtain the morning of the crash. She was carrying a small bag of groceries from her car. "Evening, Mrs. Fletcher," called as he walked over. "I wanted to ask you something. Did you happen to see what happened to my car the other morning?" She hesitated, clutching the bag a little. "Well, I saw a man in a vest. He seemed very serious, said he was helping keep order. I didn't want to get in the way." "Did he say his name?" pressed. She shook her head quickly. "No names, just said he was working for the board. Honestly, I didn't question it. He looked official enough." Her eyes darted nervously before she excused herself and shuffled toward her door. Stood there unsettled. The neighbors weren't questioning this man at all. They were simply accepting his word because he looked the part. As he turned back toward his townhouse, a voice called from across the street. "You're not the first, you know." It was his next-door neighbor, a sharp-eyed woman who always seemed to notice everything. She was leaning on her porch railing, sipping tea. "Cross the street quickly. What do you mean?" She set down her mug. "That man, been wandering around for weeks. I've seen him with his clipboard, writing things down, taking pictures of houses. He knocked on my door once and told me my porch light was the wrong wattage. I laughed in his face, but he didn't even blink, just walked away." "Did you ever report it?" asked. Shrugged. "I thought he was some new hire from the board. I figured they'd announce it eventually. But now, seeing what happened to your car, something's not right." Exhaled slowly. Finally, someone else who doubted the story. "He said his name was Officer, but the HOA office has no record of him." "That explains a lot," said, her eyes narrowing. "Because the last time I saw him, he was carrying a badge that looked like it came out of a novelty shop. Too shiny, too perfect, like it had never been used." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, the crickets beginning their nightly chorus in the background. "So what do we do?" finally asked. Tilted her head thoughtfully. "First, we watch. We see where he goes, who he talks to. If he's not official, then why is he here at all? And how many people has he convinced?" Her calm, investigative tone gave a sense of direction. For the first time since the crash, he didn't feel entirely alone. That night he sat by his window, lights dimmed, watching the street. Around 9 o'clock, as if on cue, the man appeared again. The same vest, the same clipboard, walking with deliberate purpose. He stopped at one house, jotted something down, then moved on. His heart pounded as he raised his phone and took photos through the blinds. This time he would not just stand by, he would collect proof. The man paused briefly under a flipping through his papers, zoomed in on the camera. The logo on the vest was nothing more than bold white letters. Security. No HOA, no city name, nothing official at all. When the man finally disappeared into the shadows, lowered his phone with a steady breath. The truth was starting to show. And with his help, he was ready to find out just how far this impersonation went. The following days became a blur of quiet investigation. No longer simply lived in his neighborhood, he studied it. He walked his block at different hours, taking note of who was outside, which driveways the mysterious officer lingered near, and where he disappeared to at night. The once familiar streets now felt like part of a puzzle he was determined to solve. Joined him in the effort, her curiosity as sharp as her sarcasm. "It's like we're in some kind of low-budget detective show," she joked one evening as they compared notes on her porch. "Except instead of jewel thieves, we're after a guy with a clipboard." Cracked a smile, but it faded quickly. "He wrecked my car, that's not just some clipboard." She nodded, her expression softening. "You're right, and if he did that to you, what else has he been doing to others?" That question became the heart of their search. One afternoon knocked on the door of a young couple who lived near the corner, Sam and Torai. They were hesitant at first, but when explained what had happened to his car, Torai's eyes widened. "He gave us a warning last month," she admitted. "Said our recycling bins weren't the right size, threatened a fine if we didn't replace them. We thought it was strange, but we didn't want trouble, so we bought new bins." "No official notice?" asked. "Just a slip of paper. Looked almost like the one you showed us," Sam added. Thanked them and walked away with his suspicions confirmed. The pattern was clear. This man wasn't targeting everyone, but he was selecting households and creating rules out of thin air. That night and spread all their evidence across her dining table. Photos, slips of paper, notes from neighbors. It looked like a crime board from a television show, only without the red string. "Here, what we know," said Packing. "He calls himself officer, no record of him with the HOA. He wears a vest that says security but nothing official. He's been handing out fake citations to anyone who doesn't question him." "And moving cars," added darkly, staring at the picture of his dented hood. Tapped her chin. "The question is why, what's in it for him?" Before could answer, her phone buzzed. It was a text from another neighbor, Jonah. He'd seen the man earlier that evening photographing houses and jotting notes in the same spot for nearly 20 minutes. "He's collecting information," said quietly. "But for what?" The next morning, decided to push further. He returned to the HOA office, this time requesting to see the most recent board meeting minutes. The receptionist hesitated, flipping through folders before apologetically explaining that the minutes were not available for public viewing yet. "That's convenient," muttered under his breath. As he walked back to his car, he noticed Price, one of the HOA board members, stepping out of the building. A polished man in a tailored suit paused when he recognized. "You're right, the car issue?" asked. Nodded cautiously. "Yes, do you know anything about a man calling himself officer?" Smile was polite but evasive. "You should be careful how much energy you put into these things. The neighborhood likes order. Sometimes people provide it in their own way. Best not to make waves." The words felt like a warning disguised as advice. Watched walk briskly toward his car, his gut tightening. Something about the exchange unsettled him more than the fake citations. Later shared the encounter with, she frowned. "Sounds like knows more than he's letting on. If isn't official, but board members are tolerating him, maybe they're connected somehow." Leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "Or maybe he's just protecting himself. Either way, the more we dig, the more uncomfortable people get." Smirked, which means we're on the right track. That evening, as reviewed his photos again, he noticed something he had overlooked before. A faint company logo on the bottom corner of his clipboard. It was partially scratched off, but enough letters were visible to suggest it belonged to a private security company. His pulse quickened. This wasn't just some random man with a vest. He might actually have a history in enforcement, even if unofficial. Knew one thing, he couldn't stop now. The trail was opening, and every clue pulled him deeper into the mystery. The car was no longer the only issue. There was a bigger question lingering, one that he and were determined to answer. Who exactly was Officer, and what did he really want in their neighborhood? The discovery of the faded logo on his clipboard refused to leave his mind. All night he kept pulling up the blurry photo, enlarging it, adjusting the brightness, hopping to make out more detail. Each time the same partial word appeared in block letters, PROTEC, followed by a jagged scratch where the rest had been rubbed away. By morning, his determination had hardened into action. He showed the image to over breakfast on her porch. She leaned in, squinting at the screen. "That has to be some kind of security company," she said. "Makes sense, right? Maybe he used to work for one, kept the gear, and now he's playing officer here." Nodded. "If we can figure out which company it was, maybe we can figure out who he really is." That afternoon put her tech skills to work. She typed combinations of the word into a search engine. Security, enforcement, patrol. Dozens of names popped up, but one caught her attention: Safe Security Services, a regional company that had folded 2 years earlier after losing its contract with several neighborhoods. She clicked through archived news articles. One mentioned a dispute involving a former employee accused of overstepping his role while on patrol. No names were given, but the description of the incident, issuing warnings he had no right to enforce, made's chest tighten. "This has to be it," whispered. "If he worked for them, he might kept the clipboard, the vest, maybe even the badge. And now he's recycling the act here where no one's asking too many questions." The theory fit too perfectly to ignore, leaned forward. "We need more than theory, we need proof." That night, they decided to watch for him again. Just after 9, appeared on the street, clipboard in hand. He moved with the same air of authority as always, stopping to jot something down outside Mrs. Fletcher's house before strolling past the corner lot. Crouched low behind his car, snapped photo after photo. This time, he zoomed in not just on the clipboard, but on the small patch stitched to the inside of his vest. It was visible for only a second as adjusted the zipper, but caught it. A faded emblem that matched the old Safe logo. The confirmation hit like a surge of electricity. "We got him," whispered to himself. When was gone and retreated inside to review the photos. The patch was grainy but clear enough to recognize. No doubt remained, wasn't an HOA officer. He was a man holding onto the scraps of an old job, pretending the role still belonged to him. "Okay," said, packing the living room. "Now we know his past, but what's his endgame? Why here? Why now?" Rubbed his chin. Maybe he wants control, or maybe he's trying to get paid. If people think he's official, they'll do whatever he says. Buy new bins, change porch lights, move cars. He gets to feel important and no one questions it. Crossed her arms. "Except you." Gave a faint smile. "Except me." The next day decided to press further. He stopped by Mrs. Fletcher's house, this time with a gentle approach. "I noticed that man stopped here last night," he said softly. "Did he give you a slip too?" Her eyes darted toward her door before she sighed. "Yes, he said my rose bushes were blocking the walkway. He told me I'd have to cut them back or face a fine. I didn't argue, I just did it." His heart sank. The man was preying on neighbors who wouldn't push back. Mrs. Fletcher, sweet and quiet, was an easy target. "Mrs. Fletcher," said firmly, "you don't have to listen to him. He isn't who he says he is." Her brows furrowed, but he seemed so sure, and he said the board approved. Shook his head. "I checked. The board doesn't even know him. He's using old gear from another job, that's all." She looked uncertain, but a glimmer of relief passed through her expression. That evening, and organized their growing pile of evidence into folders. Photos, testimonies, screenshots of articles about Safe. The case against was building. But with each piece of proof, one question grew louder in his mind. How would they reveal the truth in a way that couldn't be ignored? As he stared at the dented hood of his car through the window, knew the answer. It wouldn't be enough to confront one-on-one. The man had to be exposed where everyone could see, where no shrug or excuse could erase the truth. And soon would begin planning exactly how to do it. By the end of the week's dining table looked less like a place for meals and more like a miniature command center. Neatly stacked folders, labeled photos, and handwritten notes covered every inch. The evidence was undeniable. Dean wasn't an officer, wasn't HOA staff, and wasn't even licensed. He was simply a man clinging to a costume. But new evidence alone wouldn't change anything. Neighbors had accepted its authority because no one dared to question him. To break that spell, and needed to do more than gather proof, they needed to show everyone the truth at the same time. "Think of it like theater," said one evening, tapping her pen against her notebook. "He's been putting on a performance. If we want to end it, we have to stage our own show, something public, something he can't walk away from. Smirked, so we're writing the finale of his act. Exactly, replied. The first step was surveillance. They began rotating shifts, taking turns keeping watch from their windows at night. When appeared, clipboard in hand, one of them would tail him discreetly at a distance. They discovered that his patrol followed a pattern: 3 loops around the block, a pause outside 2 specific houses, then a final stop at the corner bench before vanishing into the shadows. One night whispered as they crouched behind fence, cameras ready, "He's predictable, almost too predictable." "Which makes it easier to set a trap," said, clicking another photo. The second step was neighbor outreach. Quietly visited the same families had approached. He asked calm, careful questions. "What did he tell you? Did he give you a slip? Did he ever mention the board?" Slowly, testimonies piled up. One woman admitted she bought a new mailbox after insisted hers was non-compliant. Another confessed she replaced her porch. Each story added fuel to the fire. The man wasn't just pretending, he was shaping the neighborhood to his liking. Finally, and drafted a plan. They would call for a neighborhood gathering under the guise of discussing safety improvements. Once everyone was assembled, they would present their findings. Photos, documents, and testimonies would be displayed and if showed up, as he almost certainly would, he would be cornered in front of everyone. Risky, admitted, running a hand through his hair as they finalized the outline. "If we misstep, he'll spin it. He's good at that." "That's why we don't argue with him," replied. "We let the evidence speak, and we let him expose himself when he tries to deny it." The timing couldn't have been better. A week later, a string of strange warnings appeared on cars along the street. Thin yellow slips fluttered on windshields, citing reasons like parking too close to curb or windows not sufficiently tinted. By morning, half the neighborhood was buzzing. Saw his chance. He slipped notices into mailboxes, inviting everyone to a community discussion on safety and security the following Saturday. When the day arrived, folding chairs lined the cul-de-sac. The turnout was better than expected. Nearly 24 neighbors showed, curious and uneasy after the sudden flood of warnings. Stood beside him, laptop balanced on a small table, projector ready to cast images against the garage door. At first, the gathering felt almost casual. People chatted, children played nearby, and the late afternoon sun painted the street gold. But tension simmered beneath the small talk. Everyone wanted answers. Then, right on cue, appeared. Clipboard in hand, vest zipped tight, he walked into the circle of chairs with the calm swagger of someone who believed he owned the stage. "What's this about?" he asked, his tone steady but sharp. "If you've got security concerns, you should be bringing them to me directly." Exchanged a glance with, "It was time." "Actually," said, stepping forward, "this meeting is about you." The words dropped into the air like a stone into still water. Conversations hushed. All eyes turned toward. For the first time since this began, the man's confident expression faltered. Just slightly, a flicker in his eyes. Continued, his voice calm but firm. "You've been presenting yourself as an officer of authority. You've been handing out slips, making demands, even moving vehicles. But the truth is, you have no official role here. And tonight, everyone is going to see the proof." Clicked her laptop. The projector hummed, and the first photo appeared on the garage door. Under a clipboard visible, the faded safe patch peeking from his vest. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "This is only the beginning," said. "We have testimonies, photos, and records. We're not here to argue. We're here to show the truth." Shifted on his feet, gripping the clipboard. For the first time, sensed something new in him, not authority but unease. The tables had turned, and the performance that had been staging for weeks was about to meet its final act. The projector's glow cast a pale rectangle across the garage door. Neighbors leaned forward in their chairs, eyes fixed on the photo of under the... His clipboard was clear in the shot, the faint safe patch visible on his vest. For a moment, silence reigned. Only the soft buzz of the projector filled the air. Then whispers began to ripple through the group. "I thought he was official. Wait, that logo's from a private company." I knew something was off. His jaw tightened, he stepped forward, raising his clipboard like a shield. "This proves nothing," he said, his voice loud enough to echo off the houses. "I wear this vest because I care about safety. None of you were stepping up, so I did. What you're seeing is dedication, not deception." Kept his tone calm. "No one is saying you don't care, but pretending to be an officer, handing out slips that look official, moving cars, that's not dedication, that's misrepresentation." Clicked again. Another photo appeared, a close-up of one of Swarning's slips. Handwritten notes, no seal, no official letterhead. A neighbor in the back stood up. "That's the same paper he left on my door, said my lawn was too high. I cut it the next day because I thought it was an HOA order." Murmurs grew louder. Heads turned toward, questions forming in everyone's eyes. His face reddened. "I never claimed to be with the HOA. I said I was security for the neighborhood, that's different." Raised the original slip had given him. "You wrote HOA enforcement right here, your words, not mine." Gasps broke out. Even those who had defended now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The pressure mounted. Displayed a news clipping on the garage door, an article about safe security services shutting down, with a paragraph describing an employee accused of overstepping authority during neighborhood patrols. Though no name was printed, the description was unmistakably familiar. "Is this you, Dean?" asked evenly. The man's composure cracked. "That company abandoned me," he snapped, voice rising. "I gave years to them, and when the contracts dried up, they tossed me aside. I still had the skills, the uniform, the knowledge. Why shouldn't I use it? Why shouldn't I protect this place if no one else will?" The outburst sent a chill through the group. Mrs. Fletcher, clutching her purse tightly in her lap, spoke in a trembling voice. "But you frightened me. You said I had to cut my roses or face a fine. I didn't know what else to do." Her words cut deeper than any evidence. His gaze flicked to her, and for the first time his voice faltered. I was only trying to keep order." Stepped forward. "Order doesn't come from fear, it comes from trust, and you broke that trust the moment you pretended to be something you're not." The weight of the statement hung heavy in the air. Glanced around the semicircle of neighbors. The faces staring back were no longer impressed or obedient. They were skeptical, even angry. His grip on the clipboard slackened. Then Price, the board member, cleared his throat. He had been quiet the whole time, sitting near the back. "Look, maybe mistakes were made, but let's not blow this out of proportion. He hasn't harmed anyone." Turned sharply. "My car was totaled because of his mistakes. Others spent money on things they didn't need because of his slips. Mrs. Fletcher lived in fear because of his words. This is not a small matter, and you knew something about it, didn't you?" All eyes shifted to, he stiffened but said nothing. The silence spoke louder than words. Sensing the moment, advanced to the final slide. It was a short video clip from her doorbell camera, approaching her porch, lecturing her about her porch light, and leaving a slip with the words, "non-compliant," scribbled in the margin. The timestamp confirmed it happened weeks before he ever confronted. The neighbors erupted. Some shouted questions, others muttered in disbelief. The curtain of authority had built for himself was shredded in seconds. Raised his hands, trying to steady the chaos. "Listen to me. Without me, this place falls apart. People park wherever they want, trash bins overflow, lawns go wild. I bring discipline, you need me." But no one looked convinced. Took a breath, his voice firm. "We don't need someone pretending to be something they're not. We need honesty, and tonight we've seen the truth." For the first time, looked smaller, his posture no longer proud but defensive. He clutched his clipboard as if it were the last piece of authority he had left. The neighbors had seen through him, and though the meeting ended without a single vote or official order, everyone knew one thing: his reign of fear was over. But for this wasn't enough. Exposure was just the beginning. The man had wrecked his car, disrupted his life, and shaken his neighbors' trust. Now it was time to take things one step further. The revenge plan was only beginning to take shape. The night of the neighborhood meeting left the cul-de-sac buzzing. Conversations spilled onto porches and sidewalks as neighbors replayed every detail. By morning, whispers had turned into full-blown discussions about Dean's fake authority. watched it unfold with quiet satisfaction. But he knew wasn't the type to retreat gracefully. The man's pride wouldn't let him fade away, not after being unmasked in front of everyone, which meant had to be ready for the next move. "This is the dangerous part," warned as they reviewed notes in his kitchen. "He's cornered, and cornered people don't always think straight." Nodded, "That's why we won't wait for him to strike. We'll set the terms." The plan was simple in concept, but layered in execution. They wouldn't confront with more evidence. He'd already brushed off logic and reason when backed into a wall. Instead, they would give him enough rope to hang his own act. It began with bait. Parked his newly repaired car in the same spot where it had once interfered, this time with a small dash camera hidden in the windshield. Placed another camera across the street, angled just enough to catch the entire front of the car and sidewalk. "We're not just catching him in the act," explained as he adjusted the setup. "We're going to let him show everyone he can't let go of the role he created." The following nights were uneventful. Stayed out of sight, though sometimes spotted a figure packing at the edge of the block. He was waiting, watching, maybe deciding what to do next. On the fourth night, the trap was sprung. The dash cam captured walking briskly towards car, clipboard in hand. He bent down, scribbled something on a slip of paper, and tucked it under the wiper. Then, with a quick glance over his shoulder, he pressed his palm against the hood as if checking for heat. Another false display of authority. The footage was gold, but weren't done yet. The second phase of the plan involved the neighbors. Invited a few of the most vocal residents, Mrs. Fletcher, the family who had replaced their mailbox, and others, to his backyard one evening. He showed them the footage in private, letting them see for themselves that was still at it. Gasps and frustrated sighs filled the air. "After everything, he's still pretending," Mrs. Fletcher whispered. "Exactly," said. "He'll keep doing this until we put a stop to it, and the only way is to show everyone at once without giving him time to twist the story." The neighbors agreed. They were tired of the fear, the confusion, the endless slips of paper taped to doors. Together, they would help stage the reveal. The opportunity came during the monthly block cleanup, when most families gathered outside to trim hedges, sweep sidewalks, and haul away debris. Rigged the footage to play on a portable projector again, this time on a screen set up in his driveway. As neighbors worked and chatted, quietly spread the word. "Stick around after the cleanup. There's something you need to see." By late afternoon, a small crowd gathered once more. Children chased each other on scooters, adults sipped water bottles, and the air carried a mix of fresh-cut grass and anticipation. And as expected, arrived. Dressed in the same faded vest, clipboard clutched tight, he tried to stride through the group as though nothing had changed. But there was an edge to his walk, a defensiveness that hadn't been there before. "What's going on now?" he asked, his voice half annoyed, half weary. Kept his answer simple. "We just thought everyone should see what you've been up to." Hit play, the projector hummed, and the video began. There was walking towards car in the dead of night. The grainy black and white footage showed every movement clearly. The slip under the wiper, the fake inspection of the hood, the glance over his shoulder. The crowd gasped, children fell silent, adults leaned forward, hands covering mouths. "That was last night," said calmly. "After the meeting, after everyone saw the truth." All eyes turned toward, his face drained of color. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. "I was just checking, just making sure things were safe." But no one believed him, not this time. A neighbor spoke up, voice trembling with frustration. "You scared my kids with those warnings. They thought we were in trouble." Another added, "You cost me money. I replaced a perfectly good mailbox because of you." The crowd closed in, not with violence, but with questions, accusations, and disappointment. Each word chipped away its last shred of authority. Watched silently, arms crossed. This was the moment he had planned for, the man trapped not by force, but by his own inability to stop pretending. The performance had finally collapsed, and there was no script left for to follow. The clipboard slipped from his hand and hit the pavement with a hollow crack. For the first time, Dean looked small, defeated. Exchanged a glance with. The revenge wasn't about shouting, fighting, or humiliating him in private. It was about showing the neighborhood the truth so clearly that even couldn't hide from it. And now the whole block had seen. The clipboard clattered onto the pavement, its echo cutting through the stunned silence of the cul-de-sac. For a long moment, no one spoke. Children stared wide-eyed, neighbors folded their arms, and stood frozen in the center like a spotlighted actor caught forgetting his lines. Didn't step forward right away. He let the silence work against, let the weight of every watchful eye bear down on him. The man had lived off the illusion of authority for weeks. Now he was powerless, stripped bare in front of everyone. Finally, Mrs. Fletcher broke the stillness. Her voice, thin but steady, rose above the murmurs. "You frightened me, Dean. You said I'd be fined if I didn't cut my roses. I lost sleep over that. You should be ashamed." A ripple of agreement swept through the group. Other neighbors voiced their frustrations, money wasted, unnecessary repairs, constant unease. Their tone wasn't violent, it was heavier. Disappointment, betrayal, anger wrapped in calm words. Tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His earlier bluster was gone. His eyes darted from face to face, searching for someone, anyone, who might defend him. Even Price, the board member who had once tolerated him, stayed seated, gaze fixed on the ground. "Why'd you do it?" someone finally asked. Shoulders sagged, his voice cracked when he answered. "Because I wanted to matter, I wanted to feel like I had a place here, like I was needed." It was the closest thing to honesty the neighbors had ever heard from him, but it was too late. The damage was done. Stepped forward, calm and deliberate. "You wanted to matter, Dean? You could done that by being honest, by helping out at cleanups, by supporting neighbors when they needed it, by being part of the community. Instead, you lied, you scared people, you wrecked my car." The words landed with weight, especially the last one. The crowd remembered the damage, the brazen way had interfered. Turned to the group. "This isn't about punishment. It's about making sure no one else has to go through this again, and that starts with accountability." Stepped forward then, holding a small folder. She opened it and revealed printed copies of the footage, the slips, the news clipping. "We've compiled everything. If he shows up again in that vest, if he tries to hand out another warning, if he so much as pretends to be in charge, this goes to the authorities, every single page." Neighbors nodded, murmuring in agreement. It wasn't a threat shouted in anger, it was a promise backed by evidence. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked once more around the circle of faces. For the first time, there was no control left for him to seize, no illusion left to uphold. With a shuddering breath, he bent down, picked up the clipboard, and pressed it to his chest like a relic of a role he could no longer play. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away down the street, his vest catching the late afternoon light. The group watched in silence until he disappeared around the corner. Exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. The plan had worked, not just the cameras or the projector, but the collective resolve of neighbors who refused to be fooled any longer. Mrs. Fletcher touched his arm lightly. "Thank you, you gave us back our peace." He smiled, though it was tired. "It wasn't just us, it was all of you being willing to see the truth." As the crowd slowly dispersed, a sense of calm settled over the cul-de-sac. Children resumed their games, conversations turned lighter, and for the first time in weeks, the air didn't feel heavy with suspicion. Later that evening, sat on his porch beside. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and purple. They shared a quiet moment, sipping iced tea, watching neighbors wave as they passed. "Do you think he'll come back?" asked softly. Shook his head. "Not as the man he was. He's lost that stage. Maybe he'll try to start over somewhere else, but here the act is finished." Leaned back in her chair, satisfied. "Then I'd say your revenge plan worked perfectly." Chuckled. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about showing him and everyone that truth beats fear, every time. The words hung in the evening air, steady and sure. From that day on, the neighborhood shifted. People spoke more openly, helped one another with chores, and laughed about the fake cop who once tried to rule the block. His name became less a threat and more a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily authority can be faked and how quickly it can be taken back. As for his car was repaired, his porch felt welcoming again, and his trust in his neighbors was stronger than ever. What began as frustration over a wrecked car had ended as something bigger. A community united, a fraud exposed, and a man who had learned, too late, that pretending to have power was the fastest way to lose it. And that was the sweetest victory of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.